I'd like to do a reading from Luke. I had a question for the Lord, and I wanted to know what to do about people who want to argue, and regardless of what you say and what you do and how much evidence you present to them, they do not want to budge, and all they want to do is win an argument. So in the face of not being able to use evidence to convince them, I wanted to read the answer that was given to me when I did another random opening of the Bible. And the chapter that came up was Luke chapter 20. I'd like to start from the parable of the wicked tenants. And he began to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and let it to tenants and went into another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. So this parable is talking about prophets that came before Jesus that were murdered and persecuted. And he sent another servant, but they also beat and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent yet a third. This one also they wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, "What shall I do? I will send my beloved son." And of course, the parable is referring to God, who's sending his son, Jesus, to earth. Perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, "This is the heir. Let us kill him, so that the inheritance may be ours." And they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants. And that's saying that the Lord will destroy those who attack his servants and give the vineyard to others. When they heard this, they said, "Surely not." But he looked directly at them and said, "What then is this that is written? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." And what he's saying here is the Lord that the Jews and everybody rejected when he came to earth was rejected. He was hung on a cross. He was treated terribly and murdered. But now, after the resurrection, he has become the cornerstone. He is going to be the one who's going to rule and the earth and the new earth. And when he does, he is going to destroy all his enemies. I saw a wonderful YouTube video of a ministry, a man that written a book about the physical space of hell and whether it exists and where it is and how it actually ties to science. And there were lots of Bible passages that he referred to physical places in the core of the earth and different layers of the core of the earth where different types of people are waiting for Judgment Day. And then he said, and then the final resting place will be a lake of fire. And he thinks, to the answer to the question of whether hell exists is yes, and it is the sun. The ultimate lake of fire that everyone is going to be thrown into is the sun. So now he infers this obviously from verses, so it's better to go to the source and hear what he has to say. And then test that to the Bible. But here it basically says, if you attack God's servants and you attack Jesus, you will be destroyed. And he that was rejected is the cornerstone. There's also another verse that says, no servant is greater than his master. And that means that if Jesus was attacked, then as Christians we can expect to get some form of attack and persecution. But then the last verse is really encouraging, because it says, everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush him. And that is the comfort that we can take, that if someone is attacking us, it's to be expected. We don't need to react. Jesus is on the case. The cornerstone is on the case for us, as long as we're for him. And then I'd like to carry on, because then it starts talking about taxes, and it starts talking about the resurrection, and whose son, ask the question, whose son is Christ? These are all, when Jesus was on the earth, he was asking, they were asking him, the scribes were asking him all these questions, and his answers always astounded them. It seems like he was able to read their minds and catch them out every time. So and I think that's what the Holy Spirit can guide us to do. Can literally guide us to read people's minds, read their intentions, and catch them out and give them answers that they don't expect, and leave them in a corner where they literally can't move. So paying taxes to Caesar. The scribes and the chief priests sought to lay hands on him that very hour, for they perceived that he had told his parable against them. But they feared the people, so they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere, that they might catch him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So they asked him, Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not? But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, Show me the denarius, which is the coin from that day, whose likeness and inscription does it have? They said, Caesar's. He said to them, Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they were not able in the presence of the people to catch him in what he said, but marveling at his answer, they became silent. So they tried to get him to challenge the authority of the Caesar, so that they could give him up and have him put in jail or hung on a cross, but they couldn't find anything. He wouldn't refuse to challenge Caesar. And that is, we've taught we need to respect authority on the earth. Sadducees asked about the resurrection. There came to him some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection. There's lots of people today who deny that there is a resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, that man must take the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children, and the second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterwards the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as a wife. So they're imagining heaven as a place where you go and you get married and you carry on like you were carrying on earth. And Jesus said to them, The son of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Now that seems to indicate that if you're not married, it's going to be much easier to get into heaven. But certainly when you get there, you will not have a wife. For they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and to the sons of God, being sons of resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord of God, the Lord, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living, for all live to him. Then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well. For they no longer dared to ask him any more questions. So scribes are people who preach in the synagogues and not necessarily the view that's in the Bible, but their own views. So, whose son is the Christ? The next question that they gave him was, whose son is the Christ? But he said to them, how can they say that the Christ is David's son? For David himself said in the book of Psalms, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. There again is the comfort that we can take, that we don't have to do anything, we don't have to react. The Lord will make our enemies our footstool, whether that now or with 10 years time, it will happen. You just have to be patient. David thus calls him Lord, so how is he his son? So he's saying, I'm not David's son and I'm no man's son, I'm the son of God. Very key difference here between the Muslim faith and the Christian faith is that Jesus himself said that he is the Son of God. And quite often when he was baptized, the Lord came and they could hear his voice. And he said, you are my son and with you I am well pleased. So there's no question that Jesus was the Son of God. Beware of the scribes. So this is the verse that I think is very important. This links into the messages from those ordinary people who have had some extreme experiences where they've walked with Jesus, they've seen heaven, they've seen hell, and they've come back to witness to us. And this seems to replicate and support exactly what they said. So Jesus said, and in the hearing of all the people he said to the disciples, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes. Right, so that's every priest around the world puts on their robes and they go to church, and love greetings in the marketplace and the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts. So this is them putting themselves above the people, rather than, the type of priest, rather than serving God, putting themselves, exalting themselves above ordinary people and thinking that they are godlike and better than everybody else. What he says about them is, and who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers, they will receive the greater condemnation. And this so clearly links into that young girl in South America's witness, that she saw a place in hell where there were Christians and there were people who were preaching in churches, and they were there because they lived a double life. So yeah, the message there is pretty scary and pretty clear, and I'm sure this is something that you won't hear in the church very often, but it is not something we should ignore or take lightly. So I'm going to finish the page just because I feel like we've hit quite a strong end there. The widow's offering. Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box, and he saw the poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. And he said, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them, for they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty put in all she had to live on. So there he's looking at the heart of people. If you make a donation and you feel good about yourself, and you're only doing it because you want to feel good about yourself, but you don't want to hurt your own pocket, then put faith that it's going to be put to good use, then that doesn't really help you. So Jesus foretells the destruction of the temple, and while some were speaking of the temple, how it was adorned with noble stones and offerings, he said, and for these things that you see, the day will come when there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And this actually happened after Jesus died. This temple was destroyed. And they asked him, Teacher, when will these things be, and what will be the sign, and when will these things about to be taken place? And he said, see that you are not led astray. See that you are not led astray. Test everyone, test every spirit. Don't believe anything that people tell you. Beware of those who lead you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time is at hand. So there's lots of people out saying, we're in the end times and we should listen to them. But we don't know the time, because Jesus is the only one that knows the time. Do not go after them. And when you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified, for these things must first take place. But the end will not be at once. Now, that's quite interesting. The end will not be at once. There was another verse saying the end is going to be like a woman in labour pains, and destruction will then suddenly come. So there's going to be lots of sort of build up towards this magnificent event where the Lord returns and takes the souls that he wants to take to heaven with him, and then judges everybody and raises everybody up from the dead and judges them and throws them into the sun. Jesus foretells of wars and persecution. Here we go. So then he said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Now, I'm sure we've seen enough wars to realize that is true. Today there will be great earthquakes. We've seen many earthquakes. If you want to see exactly what's going on, there's on your iPhone you can download an app that shows you every single earthquake around the world, and you would be astounded how many earthquakes there are that are never reported in the media. There will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will all lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors for my name's sake. This will be your opportunity to bear witness. So we need to use these opportunities to bear witness to the Lord. Settle it therefore in your minds, not to meditate beforehand how to answer. So when you get put in a situation where you need to answer, you don't answer on what you think and prepared, and don't prepare. It's saying don't prepare. Don't meditate beforehand how to answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict. So exactly like Jesus was able to answer all his enemies, he will give us the words that we need, and they will not be able to contradict us. We don't need to worry. You will be delivered up even by parents and brothers. Now, I've certainly experienced some of that, and relatives and friends. And some of you will be put to death. Well, if it comes, close your eyes, grin and bear it. At least it won't be forever as the ones who have hurt you. You will be hated by all for my name's sake, but not a hair of your head will perish. And this is in the afterlife. You won't experience the second death. By your endurance you will gain your lives. So just keep faith and keep going. So I think we can end it there. I think that's a very powerful message from Jesus, saying that he's with us, and whatever we need, he knows what we need. We don't need to worry about it. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks for listening.